Greetings, book lovers everywhere, and welcome to E-Train Talks. I'm E-Train, a 13-year-old literacy advocate, booktuber, and kindness promoter. Here on E-Train Talks, I try to shine a bright light on children's storytellers and all the amazing books they share with the world. And today, we get to celebrate a storyteller who touches not only the minds, but also the hearts of all of his readers. A talented poet and a talented author. He has the remarkable gift of writing about sensitive and painful topics that come up in middle school in a way that brings comfort and understanding to everyone who reads his stories. I'm so proud to introduce to you the incredible Chris Barron, a lyrical writer, a multi-award winning author, and a storyteller I've admired since reading his first book, All of Me. The one and only author Chris Barron is the best. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's so good to be here.
It's really good to have you as well. I have been waiting for this interview for so long because your books have touched my heart and the hearts of so many other middle grade readers. So, speaking of your books, let's talk about one that's coming out pretty soon. Coming up in March is an anthology entitled On All Other Nights that you co-edited with authors Joshua S. Levy, who I interviewed, and Naomi Milliner. I'm super excited about it because you don't often see Passover brought up in middle grade. Maybe you see Hanukkah, maybe even Yom Kippur, but never Passover, which always makes me kind of sad. So it's great to see that all of you incredible Jewish authors are highlighting it. So for those who don't know, On All Other Nights is a collection of short stories written by 14 incredible authors, many of whom I've had the chance to talk with on my podcast, because I love highlighting Jewish authors. Jewish writers and people in the writing community are the best. So, a middle grade anthology, whether about Passover or not, is not something you often see or hear about every day. So, I'm sure everybody listening would love to learn about On All Other Nights. So, without giving too much away, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean it's it's such a good introduction about it. It's really a labor of love that, with Josh and Naomi that we put together. We actually debuted our debut novels came out in 2019, and that's where we met and became friends and have been kind of dreaming of this ever since. But I think you really touched on it. It's that there's so much rich diversity in Jewish stories, in Jewish heritage, tradition, and culture. And this book really brings together so many different, walks of life, observances, traditions, and puts them in kind of a middle grade, fun, heart-tending ways, and really like across genres, verse and fiction, nonfiction. To bring home like that richness of tradition that Passover has, because you're right, there aren't too many books about it, but it's like the most stories exist inside of Passover,
Yeah. It's really great to see it all the stories highlighted. Passover is it's 8 days, which many people don't know, and it's one of the most important. Everybody talks about Hanukkah, but that's not really that important in terms of actual like Jewish beliefs, Judaism in itself. But Passover, it's up there. It's probably one of the top 5, top 3 even. I mean, you have Yom Kippur,
Yeah.
which obviously tops it, but Passover is just whew, you get family, the Seder, it's amazing.
And I think that's what's so fun about the anthology is you take all this like the sacred and you put it next to the middle grade viewpoint of it, and this
Yeah.
kind of idea of like through the eyes of a younger person seeing their family, the intergenerational levels of connection, historical levels, and how it ties together makes the stories really, really fun. And I think it's going to be a really great companion to a Seder, of course, because
Yeah.
there's 14 stories and each story is a step of Passover. But I think also like anyone who observes traditions, has heritage, will understand so much of what's going on. So what I like about the book, and it's been a lot of work, a lot of joy to put it together over the years here. But I think anyone who knows tradition, who knows heritage will find really good connections to the stories.
I know that I will as a reader, and I'm dying to read it. So, continuing with On Older Nights, it is filled with fiction and nonfiction stories told from different backgrounds and different Jewish traditions. Because there are so many different kinds of Judaism, and they all celebrate the holidays in different ways, different, unique, and fun ways. So, was this the goal of the project to kind of show the diversity in Judaism, much and also just middle grade in general? And why is it so important to share all the different sides to just one Jewish holiday?
Yeah, I think I mean, that's the heart of it. It's this kind of joyful celebration of a tradition that's been celebrated for thousands of years. It's a meal, and it's so much more, right?
Right.
So this idea of like a meal is something that in Jewish tradition we all share. We come from all different kinds of backgrounds. There's so like you said, a diversity of Jewish traditions coming together in the story, and we get to see all those sides. But I think that just humanity overall is brought together by this idea of a meal and this idea of remembrance, and the importance of remembrance and what it means to us to be human and be together. Um, but it is a goal, and it's meant to bring in that kind of universal nature of that meal together of tradition and also of Jewish joy.
Mhm.
And more than ever, that's needed right now, is to understand and to relate to how we're all people together.
I love that. And we've talked a lot about Another Nights, but now let's dive into your personal stories. So, the first book of yours that I read was The Magical Imperfect. It's a one of a kind novel in verse, and it tackles myths and family. Before reading your book, I had never heard of any Jewish mythologies like the tales and stories that come up in your novel. What kind of research went into The Magical Imperfect, with both the mythologies and also in general? And was any of the story told with you or someone you know in mind?
Yeah, so I think it's funny. So I will say to you that, and to anyone, like, I do so much research when I'm writing, because one is it's like my academic life is research also. But I also think that there's so much like richness in history and whatever I'm writing, but I want to make sure I'm weaving in not just truth, but like an understanding of context and all that. So there's always a ton of research, no matter how close I am to the topic. But yeah, there's me in that book. There it's like you mentioned, like, do I see it? Would I have someone in mind? And I think so. When I was a kid, I was always the one like on the front of the reading, like when it was the reading time, story time. I was like on the front of the mat, and I'd be listening, 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 and I actually learned later in life that I'm an auditory learner.
Mm.
So I think that's why I was always so drawn to story time. But anyway, I would always be the first one. I always wanted to tell stories and listen to stories. And I asked my teacher, like, how can I create a story? And my teacher, Mrs. Goldberg, actually looked at me and she said, you can write a story of your own, and it starts with you. And I was like, with me, with my own life. And I think that is like threaded into all my stories. So much so in the magical and perfect, where there's a lot of connection with my own life, with my wife, who's Filipina, who has really severe eczema, just like Malia in the story. But even so, then I would research it and try to understand everything I could about what would this character Malia really be suffering from, especially in that year of 1989. And then, of course, researching the mythology of the Golem and Prague and where Aton's family comes from was just so much fun, because there's mainline story, but there's just these other stories that all flow together. It was a lot of fun. And this idea of like these mythologies and mixing in, old world mythologies clashing and mixing into like new world technology and understandings. It was a lot of fun. So yes, tons of research.
Well, research definitely goes into writing, and I mean, it can oftentimes be really tough, really rigorous, but in your case, it can also be fun, and I like that.
It's definitely rigorous. It's definitely a lot of work, and I think it produces a lot of what's the term, like rabbit trails, where you just hop down
Yeah,
something.
like rabbit holes.
Yeah, I better
Yeah.
hop back because I'm way too far away. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in your most recent book, well, one of your most recent stories, The Gray, which I have right here, you take our protagonist on a journey from all that he knows, like video games and, of course, his friends, and send him on what seems like his worst summer vacation nightmare to his relatives in, drumroll please, nature. Ah! I mean, for a teenager, that sounds horrible to be away from a phone. I mean, I don't have one, but, you know, thanks, Mom. Things eventually change though for Sasha, who is the main character, in unexpected ways. He finds himself connecting with nature, connecting with the scenery where his family grew up, and some other creatures that he meets as well. He has a really big connection with them. So can you share why you chose to take Sasha away from everything that he was used to, not necessarily knows, but used to, and do you think he was so connected to nature in itself?
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad as you say it, like I chose to pull him away from everything he knew. Mean author. But yeah, I mean, I think I would say on a bigger level in life, all of us are sometimes forced to make a change.
Mhm,
And the things that often served us or helped us can sometimes become difficult and challenging for us. And that's what happens to Sasha is like these things he was finding comfort in, the things that brought him joy just weren't. And the
mhm.
more he tried, the worse it got until, it gets until he really ends up putting himself in a difficult situation. And that's a big part of the story for him is it's not so much that it's video games or technology that are ruining his life. It's just that that's one little part of what's making things worse.
Mm.
So he needs a reset. He needs to get out in nature and he needs to find who he is again and anew.
A lot of middle schoolers deal with anxiety. I did, especially during COVID, and I still do a little bit now, and a lot of us do, and it can be really tough to deal with. How were you able to tap into the feelings of middle schoolers so well? And what messages would you like your readers to keep with them from Sasha's story?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen a lot of anxiety in my own kids, in
Mhm.
my own life, and in my students, especially, as we were in this strange kind of post-pandemic, which is still around, but not, but I've seen anxiety on the rise, and I know I deal it with myself. And it's something for Sasha that the anxiety gets so bad for him, and he goes into this place he calls the gray, and he tries to deal with it. And it's hard to think of a message, but I think what the story is about and what I love about books, and I think maybe you do too, is you get to see like the whole journey of a character unfold. It's
Yeah.
not like a quick shoot, like short version of something. It's like you get to take time with it and see it develop, ups and downs. And I think with Sasha, that's really the case that in this story, Sasha is learning to deal and cope with anxiety, and there's not an easy, quick fix. There are
Mhm,
things that make it better, there are things that trigger him, but I think it's about, on the one hand, empathy for readers to understand what it's like to go through anxiety. And that's something that I really try to dive into in the story with research, with my own experience, with the experiences of people I knew that here's a kid whose anxiety is really, really triggered, and what does he do to cope with it? And so that's why there's so much about breathing and strategies that he works out with his therapist, with his Aunt Ruthie.
mhm,
Um, that's a part of the story with horses in the story that he encounters these horses that really change him. And of course, a lot of us know about things like equine therapy and the things that the power of kind of connecting with animals. But I think for Sasha, part of it is coming in contact with something like a horse, which is just so much bigger and wilder than himself, something he cannot control,
mhm.
and learning to connect.
So now let's shift gears to your debut novel, All of Me. So you also dive deep into the feelings and emotions of middle schoolers and what we go through. And I, for one, know firsthand how cruel middle schoolers can be, how aggressive, how unkind they can be. It hurts. Especially, I've noticed that people don't speak out and about a lot of things, especially about the anxiety boys feel about their weight. But I can tell you, middle school boys do bring it up. And not in a way that makes you feel like you're seen. They do the opposite. They do it as a way to hurt you. They try to find anything about you that's somewhat different and just pick on you for it, make you feel small. They bully their peers. So my question is for you, why did you decide to shine a light on the struggles that boys go through? I mean, it's not often brought up, the struggles that we have to deal with, especially over weight. And did you know that from the very beginning of this writing journey, your protagonist was going to be a boy?
First of all, I want to say sorry for you that you've had to deal with that in your life. Um, and I think that's something that, we share, and I think so many of us share. No one is immune or free from that. And I think that's why maybe we relate so much to middle grade books that touch on the heart of subjects like this, and that bullying is a real thing. And you know, I think kids get bullied for the weirdest, silliest reasons. And but yes, with all of me, I think I knew from the beginning that I would write about Ari. Um, and you know, I will say that and I don't think I've said this on many podcasts, but I'll just say it on yours, like an exclusive. But my family name was changed to Baron, but it is Rosenzweig, and
Mm.
so I, I didn't change it to Baron, but it was changed, and I relate so much to Ari. So I knew I wanted to write a story. And the LA Times actually called in all of me a fictional retelling of Baron's life, which the reason I like that phrase is because it helps me to give some context to the story. Is that a lot of things that Ari went through, I went through, and so when I wrote it, I knew I wanted, I wanted people to hear of the journey of a boy going through this, because I think boys are often told like to be tough, to
Mhm.
let it roll off, or oh, they're just trying to be funny, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
It isn't funny, and I think that's just part of the storyline that people don't know, that boys have like deep oceans of feelings,
Mhm.
and I think with all of me, and that's partly why I wrote it in verse, is I wanted there to be this internal perspective of what Ari goes through. There's action and movement in the story, of course, but there's also the deep internal, and I didn't want to hold back too much.
That is so, so true. The society that we live in, especially just like middle school in general, you can't like I think everybody talks about it, but I still think it's true. Like the world, middle school bullies, they make boys think that they can't cry. I know that realized recently that I can't cry. It can be hard just
Mm.
because of everything that I've gone through, everything that so many kids at my school go through, at any school really. And it's important to have books like All of Me, Magical and Perfect, all of your stories that really touch on these topics that we can all relate to. So we feel seen in the stories, feel
Thank
hope.
you. Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and I think that's a main theme, is acceptance for who you are. And that's why I think, for Ari, he finds these like very imperfect friends who
Yeah.
like just have their own issues, but they love Ari for who he is.
Mhm.
And I think that's something on all our hearts, is that we need to be able to find those people who can show us who we are and remind us who we are, so we can be ourselves.
Absolutely. And my next question for you is shifting back to the magical and perfect. So it highlights our main character, Aton, who actually has this, I think he has the same Hebrew name as me, which is pretty cool. Um, he's not spoken in a very long time. It's called selective mutism, what he has, and he has chosen not to speak. It's not something that he can't control. It is basically the only thing that he can control in his life ever since his mother went to the hospital. I haven't read much middle grade discussing going silent as a coping mechanism. So I guess that might be the reason why he stopped talking, but from the author yourself, why did Aton stop speaking? Why did he do it? And were you inspired by other people's experiences to write about him?
What a penetrating question. That's a really good one.
Thank you.
I When I thought of Aton, I thought of someone who was quiet, who didn't necessarily was experiencing a lot of things, has a family. As you know, in the Magical and Perfect, there's a lot going on in the world and in the family and in the town. The immigrants who came all the way from far away. Um, and Aton's a good kid. He's just was already a little bit quiet. Didn't know how he fit into this world that he lived in, and to express himself. And when his mom left, he'd like to say, Aton would say, when my mom left, she took my words with her.
Mm,
And because she was kind of his emotional um, resonance, like his emotional connection to the world. His dad, is a contractor. He's busy. His grandfather is a bit old world for him, even though he's so connected to his grandfather, and he has no problem speaking to him. But his mother was really the one who taught him. So he just stopped talking. And I think if you asked him why, he wouldn't know why.
yeah.
It's just something that he did. I did have a really good mentor text in a book called After Zero by Christina Collins, which is a really good middle grade book that came out a little while before this. So I did look at experiences that other authors had written about, and it's an interesting selective mutism is really interesting because it has various triggers and different levels of severity. You know,
Yeah. And it's definitely something for all of you listening, if you want to look into selective mutism, check out Chris's book recommendation as well. You can check online, learn about other resources, because it's really, I think interesting is the wrong word, but it's just something that you really should look into to further understand people and how the world can turn what it can turn us into, what experiences, what choices can make us.
yeah, because a lot of times people will have an expectation of a kid, and the kid doesn't even understand the expectation.
Yeah,
And I think there's bridges to be gapped there. I agree.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And now, on a bit of a lighter note, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So I'm really curious about your new middle grade book with Rajani LaRocca. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. It's entitled "The Secret of the Dragon Gems." The cover looks fantastic. The title in itself really captivates me. So, can you tell us a bit about your latest work, and is it part of a series?
Yeah, so I have one right here. I'm just gonna hold it up. Secret of the Dragon Gems that I got to write with my dear friend and amazing author Rajni LaRocca. And it's about these two kids, Sam and Tripty, who are at a sleepaway camp and they do not love it. And then at the last night of camp, they see a light in the sky. And then they kind of go toward where the light was, and it was a stream. And in the stream, they see some shining rocks, and they remind them of their favorite book series called the Dragon Gems. And they
Mm,
start talking about their favorite book series, like we all do. Like if I read a book series that you love, we could be talking about those forever. So they
yeah.
really connect, and they decide to take the rocks home with them to remember each other by. And pretty soon, when they're home, he lives in California and she lives on the East Coast, and they start to write letters to each other. And pretty soon, they discover that these are no ordinary rocks. And it's a super fun book that's written. It's epistolary, so it's written in letters,
Oh,
but
cool.
also in emails, text messages, video chats, Me Too videos, Wonkipedia articles, all kinds of fun stuff. It's illustrated. So there's a lot of fun stuff. And there's actually excerpts from the Dragon Gems books that they love. So readers get to see a little bit of that. So we just had so much fun nerding out writing this book together. And we're dreaming up a sequel right now.
Staying on the subject of your books and the themes that they feature, which many of them feature Jewish themes, I mean, I've got to say, I just love that. I love your books. I love the fact that they celebrate and honor different aspects of Judaism. At what point did you decide that you wanted to write stories? And more specifically, did you know from the start that you were going to include Jewish themes, Jewish characters in your stories?
I love this question because it's such an important one for me. And I'm thinking about this, and you know, I think I've always written stories, and I've always been Jewish. And so to me, it's like that's just who I am. And I think as a Jewish person, we as Jewish people, like we explore life through story. We tell stories at the dinner table, right?
Yeah.
We live and exist in stories. So it's just the most natural thing for me to think about my characters being Jewish. What else would they be?
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I'm coming from with it. And I think all the characters have different, maybe slightly different ways they observe it, family members that observe it differently. My stories are typically multi-generational. It's an important part of the stories I write because I think that's so important for generations to make connections. Um, but so it's just reflected in the stories, and I think reflect people I've known. In all of me, there's a very wise and loving rabbi, for example.
Yeah.
And that reflects mentors I've had in my life. So I like to bring the things in my life that have really shined brightly in my Jewish life into the stories as much as possible.
I love that. And you are certainly shining your Jewish loving light into your middle grade, and we can all sense it. We all love it. And I just wanted to wiggle this question in here as at the time of the recording, it is Super Bowl Sunday. I am a huge football fan. I'm a Seahawks fan, so I'm a diehard Niners hater. So this video will probably come out after the Super Bowl, so whatever predictions that we might make could be either completely correct and it's like we can see the future, or they could be completely wrong. So,
But we're gonna
what is
risk it.
yeah,
Okay.
we're willing to risk it.
Okay.
So, what is your Super Bowl prediction? Who's going to win and what is the final score going to be? I know I'm putting you on the spot, so take as much time as you need to think.
Okay. This is such a hard question because I've always been, AFC because I'm San
Yeah.
Diego and the
Mm,
Chargers. Now the Chargers have left San Diego, so there's kind of a brutal backstory there.
yeah.
And my wife's from the Bay Area, and so I will be rooting. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry
It's okay. It's
for the
okay.
49ers. And I
Oh,
think they're gonna pull it out. I just have this feeling.
I, you know, Yo, I'm a Seahawks fan, so that's why I don't like the Niners. Everybody in my family is a Niners fan besides my dad and I, because we're in Sacramento. So I if I have a feeling that if I say the Chiefs will win, then the Niners are gonna win. But I think because I think that would be karma. But then again, that's a song by Taylor Swift, who is at the game. So I think that I will say the Niners, but hopefully karma is the guy on the Chiefs who's gonna take them to victory. I'll just say for the record the Niners will win. Hopefully that's not true. So, Niners 30 to 27, though I think regardless of karma or whatever, I think it's gonna be a really close game.
Okay. Okay. And I'm gonna remember this and I'm gonna see what happens and we're gonna reconnect. And
Yeah,
then I want to say maybe later down the line we can talk NBA finals when the time comes.
yep. I'm a Kings fan, so that's the one team that I actually like that's in where I live. So,
They're great. Yeah.
hopefully the Kings will make it, but probably not, but I have hope. I'm knocking on wood. So back to book talk.
Yeah.
As a fun little interlude for everybody that's sports and books or just sports. So, you are a professor of English at San Diego City College, which in itself sounds like a super fun and also thought-provoking job, especially for a writer. Does being around students help you with your writing ideas?
Yeah, it's a great job. I mean, I've been there. This is my 25th year teaching at
Wow.
San Diego City College. Yeah, and I've always loved teaching. I started in graduate school and went to graduate school as for writing, and poetry, but I got a chance to teach there. So I've been teaching ever since and I absolutely love it. And it's 100% true that it keeps me completely grounded and humble. And the student voices are so unique and ever changing. And so when I'm in a classroom, it is such a phenomenal experience. And what a privilege to be able to be with students. And San Diego City College is one of the most diverse campuses in all of San Diego. And so students from all over the place, from so many traditions, just in a classroom,
Yeah,
and here we are all taking, English creative writing class, but you came from Africa and you're from Mexico and you're from up the street. And so I have like the unique honor of like giving them a writing prompt and then we're
yeah,
sharing stories together.
I love that.
Yeah, and I will say that when I write stories, I'll never be a professor that like assigns their own book, but
Mm.
sometimes like the creative writing club on campus will say, "We want to read some of your stuff." And they always have such good feedback and ideas and don't use these words and you shouldn't, like it's been phenomenal. Yeah.
I love that. And we talked a lot about your published stories and those about to be published. But
Hmm.
what about those that you're currently working on? Can you share any sneak peeks of upcoming writing projects that are going on behind the scenes?
I can share about my next novel in verse, which
Woo!
comes out in 25, I believe. So it's a while, but it's titled right now Forest Heart, and it's got two of my favorite characters. And I wonder if I think of that every time I write a new book. It's like these are my favorite characters. No,
Yeah,
but right now it's yeah, Finn and Rabbit. They're my favorite characters I've written, and they live, and I think this will maybe connect to you a little bit. They live in Northern California.
Woo!
Yeah, and it's a time of severe wildfires,
Oh, yeah.
and when a wildfire, like, hits their town, everything changes, and they have to, like, learn how to evacuate, um, learn how to live evacuated, and then they have to return to the town to what might be the new normal, but there's no normal. So it's about learning how to be in that environment and what how they change from before the fire and after.
That sounds amazing. Especially it's so relevant as well because there's so much wildfire going on, especially in the summers in Northern California and across the world as well. I've seen what's happening in Maui, in Chile right now.
Yep.
It's wild. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Wildfire.
No, it is I mean,
That's not a pun moment, Ethan. Come on.
it's a pretty good one though. But
Yeah,
I mean, and we have to laugh at these things because 'cause they're so dire, and that's why I even try to put a lot of humor in the book because, we live our lightest, laughiest moments in some of the most dire situations,
yeah.
and even in writing this book, I mean, the world keeps changing, so the book just keeps changing a little bit, but anyway, that's what I'm working on next.
Well, I'm so excited. I'm sure all of us are. And also kind of sad because now we're going to the final question of the interview, the question I ask every single person that I've ever interviewed, I think. Um, if you could be or meet any literary character, you could be or you could meet your favorite author. It could also be your favorite book character. Who would it be and why?
Wow.
I
So
know.
many choices because I maybe like you do this. I think about universes like the Star Wars universe or
Yeah,
the Lord of the Rings. So, okay, so off the top of my head, I would say probably Gandalf. If I could meet Gandalf,
that'd
um,
be awesome.
it would be, and I am a Lord of the Rings person. I'm a Tolkienist. I love everything about those stories. They kind of raised me in some ways. And so for me, I imagine talking to someone like that who's a being of pure spirit who's living with us and has that kind of wisdom and mentorship, but also like lets you do your own thing. I would love to meet um, e- or Aslan would be good too. Similar
Yeah.
concept,
Similar concept, but and also similar in the fact that they're both great answers.
exactly. And I'm gonna throw in one more. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I would say too, if I could hang for a day with Winnie the Pooh, that wouldn't be bad.
that
Because
would not be bad at all.
right, because I love the Hundred Acre Wood, and I just that would be a dream come true also.
It has been amazing talking with you today, Chris. You are the best. I've said that multiple times, but each time it stands truer and truer. Your stories are beautiful, and your writing story is just as interesting as well. And I'm really grateful that you took time out of your day, out of Super Bowl Sunday, no less, to talk with me.
Well, it's been an absolute joy. I love this conversation. We could keep going on forever, but we got a game to watch, right?
Yeah. So I know everyone tuning in enjoyed listening to your answers and just hearing you talk about your incredible stories just as much as I did. And I cannot wait to read what you do next. And I hope we can talk again in the future. So, everybody, be sure to follow Chris's journey on social media. He's on Twitter and Instagram. I can put those in the description down there. Pointing is weird on Zoom. Hopefully, I'm pointing in the right place. And his website is www.chris-baron.com. That'll also be down there as well. Hopefully, I'm pointing down. Maybe this is like up or YouTube. I
Somewhere.
don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, whatever. So until next time, stay safe, keep reading, and by reading, of course, I mean read Chris's books. You will not regret it. And maybe by next time, I'll learn how to point on Zoom. So see you in the next one, everybody. Bye.
Bye.